Well, well, well. They trained for 30 years. 30 years of scheming, planning, whispering in dark corners, sharpening their knives, their minds, their weapons, believing they could outsmart you, break you, make you bend to their will. And they did it all with one thing in mind: to dominate, to make sure you stayed small, stayed quiet, stayed under their thumb. They spent decades molding their illusions, building their empire of lies, turning their victims into pawns in a game they thought was theirs alone. They couldn't fathom that in the end, the very thing they feared most would come from the one thing they never anticipated: your silence. Silence is dangerous, you know. It's the most violent weapon in the world. You don't even need to pull the trigger. The quiet, the calm, the nothingness. It drives people insane. They don't know what to do with it. They expect chaos, expect you to scream, expect you to lash out. But you don't. You don't make a sound. And that silence, that unbearable stillness, breaks them. They trained for 30 years thinking they had it all figured out, thinking they knew how to control you, how to manipulate every aspect of your existence. Every word you spoke, every gesture, every reaction, they thought they had it mapped. They thought they could predict you because they studied your every move. They believed they had cracked the code to your mind, made you nothing more than a predictable puppet. They built your cage around you, brick by brick, tightening the bars so you could never escape. They figured out where to hit, when to strike, when to dangle the carrot just out of reach, so you'd always chase it. But here's the truth: they didn't see coming. People like you, they don't need carrots. They need nothing. They say it's the game that matters, the chase, the battle, the power. But here's the secret: they're all fighting for a prize that doesn't even exist. You're not playing their game. They're playing yours. They always have been. You see, they mistook your quiet for weakness. They thought they could drown you in their noise. Every scream, every insult, every challenge, they thought it would break you. But what they didn't know is that you've been playing a different game from the start, a game they can't even comprehend. You've been waiting for this moment, waiting for the one word that would undo everything, the one word that would bring their entire house of cards crashing down. They built their empire on the backs of the broken, on the lies they whispered, on the promises they never kept. They pulled strings, they created chaos, they twisted the world around them into a distorted reflection of what it was supposed to be, and they thought they had you in their pocket. But all that manipulation, all those games, those well-laid plans, they didn't count on one thing: the power of knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. The thing about silence is, it's not just absence, it's presence, it's power, it's control. And it terrified them. Do you see it now? They couldn't anticipate it because they never understood you. They didn't realize that your silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. The strength to withhold, to choose when to speak and when to let the world unravel itself. The strength to sit back, watch them run around like rats in a cage they built for themselves, and let them fall apart without lifting a finger. They thought they were the architects of your downfall. But no, no, no. They were the architects of their own destruction. You just allowed them to build the foundation of their own demise. You stayed silent long enough for them to believe they were winning, long enough for them to think they had you on the ropes. And then, with one simple, unspoken word, you ended it. Isn't it delicious? The way they scream, the way they flail now that their world is collapsing around them. Their cries echoing in the emptiness they built with their own hands. It's almost like watching a child who for the first time realizes the world is bigger than them and that their toys, those precious little toys they cling to, are nothing but dust. You never had to play their game. You just had to wait. You watched them trap themselves. You let them build their towers high. And then you did the one thing they never saw coming. You stopped playing. Their 30 years of careful planning, it crumbled at the touch of your indifference. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't comprehend how a person like you could exist, how a person could go through their entire labyrinth of tricks, traps, and manipulation without ever needing to fire a single shot. They couldn't grasp how one word, one simple word, could reduce them to nothing. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's not a coincidence. It's a choice. And you chose it wisely because you knew they couldn't survive it. You knew they were fragile. And the moment you stopped feeding their ego, the moment you stopped reacting to their games, they were done. And they couldn't even see it happening. They trained for 30 years to destroy you, to wear you down, to bend you to their will. But they forgot something crucial. They didn't know how to deal with someone who doesn't need anything from them. They could break anyone else with their tricks, their lies, their threats, but not you. You were different. In the end, their greatest weapon was their own belief in their power, their conviction that they could control everything. And that was their downfall. You didn't need to outsmart them. You just had to wait for them to outsmart themselves. You let them build their empire on lies, on promises, on the illusion of control, and when the time came, you dismantled it with nothing more than your absence. Now, they look around, trying to pick up the pieces of their broken empire, but there's nothing left to salvage. They never expected you to be the one who would rise from the ashes. But you did. You always will. And now, with their entire world in flames, they're left wondering, how did you do it? They thought their lies would hold forever. They constructed an intricate tapestry of deceptions, hoping that it would be enough to keep you in the shadows, to keep you silent, to keep you in the dark. But the truth is, the more they tried to bury you, the more they dug their own graves. They never stopped to ask themselves why you never fought back, why you never raged against their manipulations. They couldn't comprehend that the silence you wore wasn't surrender. It was your shield. You didn't need to scream. You didn't need to throw punches. The battle was always theirs to lose. And now, they see it, too late. They're standing in the rubble of their empire, looking at the pieces of their broken world, and they realize they were never in control. You were. They built their world on the foundation of illusion, a house of cards held together by their manipulation. They didn't see the cracks beneath, the fractures in their own plans. You didn't need to be a genius to see that their world was always destined to fall. The funny part? They didn't even know it was crumbling until it was too late. They were too busy watching you, studying your every move, trying to predict your next step. They underestimated the one thing that would bring them to their knees: your ability to remain still. You let them weave their web, and you watched. You observed. You learned. But they thought they were invincible. They thought they had you trapped in a cage they'd so carefully constructed. They never imagined that their empire of lies would be exposed, not by force, not by aggression, but by the sheer weight of their own arrogance. They forgot the most important rule in any game: never underestimate your opponent. You were never the opponent they expected. They wanted to see rage, to see fury, to see desperation. They wanted to see the cracks form, the mental strain, the breakdown. But you never gave them that satisfaction. The silence you maintained, the distance you kept, became your weapon. The more they tried to manipulate, the more they tried to break you, the further away you pulled. You didn't need to speak. Your absence did all the talking. Now, with the walls of their empire crumbling, they can't even understand what went wrong. The worst part? They never realized they were the architects of their own failure. The more they pushed, the more they shoved you down, the more they dug, the more they alienated themselves from the one thing that kept them standing: you. And the moment you stepped away from their grasp, they crumbled. Oh, they were so certain, so sure of themselves. They convinced themselves that they could outwit you, outlast you. They believed that their calculated moves would always stay one step ahead. But the moment you took control, the moment you ended it, with nothing more than a single word, they lost the one thing they never saw coming: the ability to control the narrative. They thought they were the writers of your story, the ones who determined the outcome. But the truth is, the moment you stopped playing, you became the author. And they became the footnotes. They think they're still in control. They believe they're the ones calling the shots. But look at them now. They're stumbling, lost, floundering, trying to patch up a world that's falling apart. Every move they make, every word they say, is just a desperate attempt to regain what's already been lost. They thought they had you figured out, that their years of training, their decades of manipulation, would guarantee their victory. But they didn't know you had been training too. You trained for a different kind of war. While they were busy sharpening their knives, you sharpened your mind. You honed your patience. You learned the most powerful weapon in this sick, twisted world: the power of waiting. You didn't rush. You didn't fall into their traps. You waited for the moment when their own pride would be their undoing. And that moment came. They thought you were a pawn in their game. What they failed to realize was that you had always been the queen. They thought you needed to fight back, to resist, to push against their forces. But resistance was never the key. Their overconfidence was. They thought they had you cornered, but every move they made only pushed them closer to the edge. The more they tried to control you, the more they allowed you to control the situation. They created the perfect storm without even realizing it. And now they're standing in the eye of it, staring at the wreckage of their own making. The irony is rich, isn't it? These people who spent their entire lives learning the art of manipulation, mastering the craft of deception, they never learned the one thing that could have saved them: how to leave a single thread of honesty in their web. They had no respect for the truth, no regard for the power of authenticity. And now, they're paying the price. Their empire, their vision, their control, it all fell apart with a single moment of clarity. A moment where you chose to stop playing by their rules. And now, the most delicious part, they have no idea how to fix it. They spent all those years training, strategizing, working under the false belief that they held the reins. But the moment you spoke that unspoken word, the moment you stopped playing their game, you shattered their grip. They don't know how to fight back. They don't know what to do because you've removed yourself from their reach, and there's nothing they can do to reclaim their position. You're already gone. The chaos they thought would come from your downfall, it's their own now. The destruction, the collapse, the unraveling, they're the ones trapped in it. And all because you dared to take control, dared to stop being the victim. You didn't fight them. You let them fight themselves. It's beautiful, isn't it? Watching them scramble, watching them break, all because of something as simple as silence. A silence that spoke louder than their entire empire of lies. And as they choke on their own mistakes, there's only one thing left to say. They trained 30 years to destroy you. And you? You ended it with a single unspoken word. The silence is deafening now, isn't it? After all the noise, the chaos, the screams of shattered egos and broken ambitions, the only thing that remains is this haunting silence. And you? You stand in the middle of it, watching it all unravel, watching them tear themselves apart. They thought they could control the narrative, twist the story to fit their designs. But what they didn't realize is that the story was never theirs to tell. You were always the one who would rewrite it. You were always the one who would decide the ending. They can't fathom it. How could they? Their carefully laid plans, their years of scheming, all reduced to dust by a single moment of defiance. A single, unspoken word. That's the tragedy of it all. They thought you were the pawn, the fool. But you were never the pawn. You were the catalyst, the one who would ignite the destruction, set the pieces in motion, and watch them crumble as they tried to contain what they never understood. They tried to manipulate you. But what they never knew was that you had always been playing them. Now, they're left with the fragments of their pride, shattered to pieces, trying desperately to glue the remnants of their empire back together. But it's too late. The cracks are too deep. The poison has already spread, and now they're drowning in their own creation. They have no one to turn to, no one to blame. The faces they once leaned on for power are turning against them, seeing them for the frauds they are. The allies they thought they controlled are starting to question the very foundation of their trust. And why? Because you were the one who exposed it all. With nothing but silence, with nothing but a glance, you showed them the truth they were too blind to see. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to fight. You simply took a step back. And they walked right into the fire they set themselves. You are the flame, and they are the ones burning. They'll spend years, decades even, trying to figure out how you did it. They'll look for an explanation, a reason, a logic they can cling to, a justification for how they could have missed it. But they'll never find it. Because what they don't understand, what they will never understand, is that you were never a part of their game. They were the ones playing by your rules the whole time. and they just never knew it. The irony is rich. They thought they were controlling the game, but they were merely puppets in a play you wrote. And now that the curtain has fallen, now that their world has come crashing down, they'll try to rebuild. They'll try to take back control. But the truth is, it's too late. The seed of doubt has already been planted in their minds, and nothing can undo that. You've become the one thing they can't erase. You've become the ghost that haunts them, the shadow that follows them wherever they go. Every time they try to move forward, every time they think they've found their footing again, they'll feel you there, waiting, lurking in the background, reminding them that you are the one who ended their reign. It's beautiful, really, watching them scramble, trying to piece together the remains of their broken power, knowing they'll never be able to put it back the way it was. They spent so long thinking they could control everything, control the narrative, control the outcome, control you. But what they never realized is that they were never the ones pulling the strings. You were. Now, they face the consequences. The truth is out there, and it's glaring, unforgiving. They'll try to fight it, try to twist it, try to bury it in lies. But the damage is done. Every move they make is a desperate attempt to reclaim something they lost long ago. They can't face the truth, can't face the reality that you were the one who orchestrated it all, that you were the one who brought them to their knees. They'll blame each other, blame the world, blame anything but themselves. But deep down, they know the truth. They were the architects of their own demise. The best part? They'll never see you coming. They'll never understand what hit them. You didn't fight them with weapons. You didn't fight them with force. You didn't even need to speak. You played a game that was beyond their understanding, a game that they were never meant to win. And now, they'll spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, wondering if they've really escaped you, wondering if they've truly outrun the consequences of their actions. The truth is, they never will, because you don't need to chase them. You're already there. So, what now? What happens when the dust settles and the pieces are in place? When the chaos dies down and the smoke clears? They'll rebuild, sure. They'll try. They'll gather the remnants of their broken empire and try to make sense of it all. But they'll never be the same. You've shattered them, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They can try to move on, but their minds will always be haunted by the thought of you, by the knowledge that you were the one who turned their world upside down. And you? You'll be standing tall, watching them from the sidelines, a silent observer in their final act of desperation. They trained 30 years to outsmart you, and yet, in the end, you ended it with nothing more than a single, unspoken word, a word that wasn't even spoken aloud but resounded louder than anything they had ever heard. And that, my friend, is the true power. The power to manipulate, to control, to break, without ever lifting a finger, without ever uttering a single syllable. They thought they were the masters of their fate. They thought they had the power to shape the world around them. But the truth is, they were never the ones in control. Not when it mattered. Not when it counted. You were. And so, as they drift into oblivion, you stand as the architect of their destruction, their master of puppets, their undoing, and they'll forever be haunted by the one thing they can never escape, the fact that you were the one who outsmarted them. The game is over. and they lost.